Picture this. It's 1986. Liverpool are kings of English football, Nigel Mansell is chasing Formula One glory, and across the Atlantic, Magic Johnson and Larry Bird are battling for basketball supremacy while a young Michael Jordan is just starting to fly. But in a small corner of Stoke-on-Trent,
play. There's a chance that one of these might burst into it. You mentioned 118.66 is the record, 10th is 114, so they're on the cusp of the...
A sheet metal ceramics worker named Phil Taylor is grinding hour after hour at the local board after his partner bought him a set the year before, unknowingly lighting the fuse for the greatest era the sport has ever seen. What happened next? 21 World Finals, 16 titles across the BDO and PDC. From here on, PDC only, 19 finals, 14 titles.
A 6-yard touchdown for Danny Amendola. And Jalen Collins, he's in there playing the slot. He gets caught looking inside. Amendola just runs a speed out on him.
A level of dominance that makes Tom Brady's 7 Super Bowls, or even Manchester United's treble, look tame. I'm still wrapping my head around these numbers, and I grew up watching Lakers and Celtics go to war in the 80s, two dynasties built for dominance. But what Taylor did to darts, it was as if one man were the sport itself. He didn't just win, he redefined what winning looked like. Phil Taylor made darts bigger than the pub, bigger than the stage. For 2 decades, he was the main event. And by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly how one man turned a working-class pastime into a global spectacle. Before we get into the rivalries, revenge, and ruthless finishes, let's zoom out. From 1994 to 2018, Phil Taylor reached 19 PDC World Championship finals. That's 19 in 25 stagings. Put it this way, it's like Manchester United reaching the FA Cup final 19 times in 25 seasons, or Lewis Hamilton entering the final round almost every year as title favourite. In the US, think LeBron making 19 NBA finals, but winning 14, not 4. Here's the mad bit. Taylor won 14 of those PDC finals, about 74% in the most pressure-packed match of the year. Even Tom Brady, the king of clutch, won 7 of 10 Super Bowls. Taylor makes elite champions look mortal. And the many faced legends, Dennis Priestley, who handed Taylor his first PDC World Final defeat. John Part proved that even the power could short-circuit. Raymond van Barneveld, co-author of arguably the greatest final ever played. And Rob Cross, the electrician who cut the power for good. Every legend needs a rival, and for Phil Taylor, that man was Dennis Priestley. The year was 1984. The WDC, later PDC, had just broken away from the BDO, and the first WDC World Final was set. Phil Taylor versus Dennis Priestley. Taylor was already a BDO World Champion, but this new stage was different. Bigger spotlight, higher stakes. And Priestley? He didn't blink. The result? 6-1 to Priestley. Taylor looked rattled, flat, beaten. It was the kind of defeat that could have broken a man, and nearly did. But Phil Taylor doesn't break. He reloads. 1996, Taylor 6-4. 1997, Taylor 6-3 from 0-2 down. 1998, Taylor 6-0, dropped just 2 legs. 2000, Taylor 7-3. Over 5 finals, Taylor won 4, and that first loss was the fire starter.
Looking anxious, but we wonder for how much longer, because her husband here is producing a rich seam of golden form.
Now, if Dennis Priestley was Taylor's origin story, Peter Manley was his punching bag, and I mean that with all due respect to one dart. The man reached 3 PDC World Championship finals, which is more than 99% of players will ever achieve. But against Taylor, poor Peter never stood a chance. 1999, Taylor 6-2 Manley, comfortable, clinical. The power doing power things. Manley good enough to reach the final, not good enough to beat Taylor. 2002, this is where it gets uncomfortable. Taylor 7-0 Manley. 7-0 in a World Championship final. Think Manchester City winning 6-0 against Watford in an FA Cup final, only worse. A masterclass in psychological warfare. And here's the kicker, Manley was so rattled he refused to shake Taylor's hand after the match. 2006, final meeting, Groundhog Day. Taylor 7-0 Manley. Again, same opponent, second whitewash, different year. Lightning absolutely struck twice. By this point, you have to wonder what went through Manley's head when he saw Taylor on the other side of the draw. 3 finals, 0 wins. Combined sets, 20-2. That's not rivalry, that's a restraining order waiting to happen.
Good is better on the better best, John Gwynn.
He's the only man I've ever seen in a leg of 1001.
93.
I know I'm guilty of repping.
2001 brings us John Part, the Canadian dartist, and this is where Taylor's dominance feels downright terrifying. Taylor 7-0 Part at the Circus Tavern, a whitewash, and even that undersells it. Part won just 3 legs across 7 sets. In football terms, imagine a Champions League final where one side wins 7-0 and the other barely touches the ball. And this wasn't some wild card. Part was already a world champion, BDO 94, and a future PDC world champion 03 and 08. But Taylor made him look like he'd wandered in from the pub for a charity leg. It was clinical, cold and merciless. Every miss from Part felt like a turnover. Every Taylor visit like a counterattack finished on the double. For context, this was the first of 3 7-0 PDC finals Taylor delivered. He'd repeat the scoreline against Peter Manley in 2002 and 2006. So if it felt historic on the night, that's because it was. Taylor wasn't peaking, he was entering his most ruthless stretch. The Circus Tavern crowd didn't know whether to roar or check on Part's well-being. Sporting brilliance and borderline cruelty rolled into one. The plot twist? 2 years later, Part would come back and beat Taylor 7-6 for the PDC title. Proof that even after a drubbing like this, steel can be reforged. Which brings us to 2003, John Part again, but this time it wasn't a whitewash, it wasn't a beatdown, it was a battle. 8 straight PDC World Championship finals and won them all. He looked untouchable, like the sport bent to his will. But on this night, something shifted. Part raced to leads of 3-0 and 4-1. Taylor clawed back and it came down to the deciding 13th set. 7-6 to Part. No sudden death, just nerve. In football terms, it was peak-era Arsenal getting dumped out of the FA Cup by a lower league side. In boxing terms, Tyson on the canvas to someone who wasn't meant to last a round. And here's the thing, Part earned it. He stood toe-to-toe with a legend and didn't flinch. When the pressure hit boiling point, he didn't just survive it, he thrived. The look on Taylor's face when the final dart landed? That was the moment he remembered he was human. After years of inevitable, invincible, untouchable, Taylor had finally been beaten, fair and square, on the biggest stage by the man he'd once annihilated. That's what made it legendary. 2004, Kevin Painter versus Phil Taylor. On paper, routine. At the Circus Tavern, anything but. Painter, the artist, dragged the GOAT into sudden death in a PDC World Championship final. 6 sets all, 1 leg for the title. Taylor had already hauled himself back from 4-1 and 5-3 down, the kind of escape act that makes champions look inevitable.
Incredible atmosphere and tension. Circus Tavern.
77.
That might not be enough of an open.
Painter stood on 128 for the upset of the century. Miss, miss, miss. The moment slipped. Taylor needed 40, missed tops, missed double 10, then buried double 5 with his last dart. Game, set, history. Post-match, even Taylor admitted it. I'm a very lucky man. Kevin outplayed me. That's not myth-making, that's the man himself. For the narrative heads, this was redemption after Part beat him 7-6 in 2003, but it wasn't neat or pretty. It was Taylor wobbling and somehow refusing to fall. He even announced his retirement in the emotion of it all, and then U-turned 4 days later. Of course he did. The story wasn't finished. 2005, Phil Taylor versus Mark Dudbridge, The Flash. A talented thrower with sharp finishing, but talent's one thing, experience is another. At the Circus Tavern in the PDC World Final, Taylor handles the 13th seed and surprise finalist with professional ease. 7-4. Clinical, controlled, unruffled. He never looked phased. It's peak Schumacher lapping traffic or Fergie's United putting two past Sunderland and strolling down the tunnel. Nothing flashy, just ruthless control. Dudbridge played well and deserved the stage, but against Taylor at this point, it felt pre-written. That was the scary bit. The extraordinary had started to feel ordinary. And when that happens, routine gets risky. Because 2007 was anything but routine. 2007, Phil Taylor vs Raymond van Barneveld at the Circus Tavern, the venue's last world final before moving to Ali Pali.
Years ago when Barneveld was sitting pretty, he'll be looking to do the same here. 11 for bull. This is exactly how Taylor went. Got the bull. Snap, snap, snap. Barneveld does exactly the same.
Barney had crossed from the BDO the year before to chase the king. The room felt small, loud, and split right down the middle. Taylor came out like a freight train, 3-0 up, later 5-3. Then Barney found a higher gear. The treble started to sound like drums, the crowd swayed, and it turned into a classic arm wrestle. We hit 6-6 in sets. The deciding set wouldn't break either man. You needed two clear legs. Neither blinked. It reached 5-5 in legs, so we went to sudden death. Rethrow for bull. One leg for the title. Barney won the bull, held his throw, and finished the job. RVB 7, 6 Taylor. Not just a classic, arguably the greatest final ever played. Momentum swings, shot making under lights, and two icons meeting right on the knife edge. The embrace at the end said it all. Respect, exhaustion, history. Taylor lost the crown, Barney took the era's signature moment, and 2 years later, Taylor would answer with a 7-1 demolition at Ali Pali. Rivalry sealed, legendary status for both, tattooed into darts forever. If you thought Phil Taylor was going to take that 2007 loss quietly, you don't know Phil Taylor. 2009 Alexandra Palace, Taylor vs Van Barneveld, the rematch. This time, there was no sudden death, no fairy tale, no drama, just one of the most clinical, ruthless performances ever seen on a dart stage. Taylor 7-1. 7 sets to 1, and he did it with a 110.94 average. World record pace for a World Championship final. The power didn't just beat Barney, he dismantled him. You could feel the difference from the first throw. Taylor wasn't smiling, he wasn't playful, he was locked in, like a prize fighter with unfinished business. This wasn't just about winning, this was about restoring order. It reminded me of those old Premier League title races when Fergie's United would lose once, then come back the next season and crush everyone just to remind them who's boss.
After the first set, it's to hook the Dutch fans.
100. Only 100.
Van Barneveld, to his credit, took it like a champion, but the spark, it was gone. That magic from 2007, the belief that he could go toe-to-toe with the power, had faded. He'd had his night. He'd landed his punch. But Taylor had the last word. 2010, Simon Whitlock, the Wizard, becomes the first Australian to reach a PDC World Championship final at Alexandra Palace, and fair play to him, reaching a final against Phil Taylor takes some serious bottle. Taylor 7, 3 Whitlock. Professional, efficient, and utterly predictable. By now, Taylor's final routine is as polished as a Rolex. He knows exactly what he needs to do, exactly when he needs to do it, and exactly how to handle the pressure. Whitlock played well enough to be there, but not well enough to trouble the master. It's like watching a very good college basketball team play against the dream team. You can appreciate the effort, but the outcome was never in doubt. Which brings us to 2013 and the beginning of the end.
A tilt for 7-5. Well, we all know what he's after here. And he gets it!
Michael van Gerwen, the young Dutchman with the cocky smile and the even cockier game, had reached his first World Championship final. At 23 years old, Van Gerwen respected everything Taylor once was, hungry, fearless, and absolutely convinced of his own brilliance. The problem was, he was facing everything Taylor had become: experienced, clinical, and utterly ruthless when it mattered most. Van Gerwen led 4-2, then Taylor turned the screw and won 5 straight sets to take it 7-4. No deciding set, just experience closing the door. But something had changed. For the first time in years, Taylor had been genuinely troubled in a final. Van Gerwen hadn't just competed, he'd pushed the master to the brink. The torch wasn't passed that night, but it was definitely being warmed up for the handover.
It's still 10-10. Taylor and
2015 Gary Anderson, the Flying Scotsman, and a thriller that went the distance. Anderson versus Taylor, experience versus hunger, Scotland versus England. And this time, hunger won. Anderson 7, Taylor 6. No sudden death, just a brutal last set where Taylor's doubles leaked and the Scot held his nerve. What made it different was how it happened, not the beauty of RVB 2007 or the shock of Part 2003, more a grinding, attritional war where Taylor's legendary steel finally showed hairline cracks. Oh, and they combined for a record 32 maximums. January 1st, 2018, Alexandra Palace, Phil Taylor's final World Championship final. His opponent, Rob Cross, Voltage, an electrician from Hastings who'd only just gone full-time on the PDC Tour the year before.
avoid that, although he leaves 165 again here.
Yeah, if there's anybody in this tournament you don't want to be.
If it were a movie, you'd call it Too Neat. The greatest ever bowing out against a newcomer fresh off the tools. But sport doesn't do scripts. Taylor 2, 7 Cross. 2-7, Taylor's joint heaviest World Championship final defeat, and it arrived on his farewell night. Taylor threw every trick 24 years at the top can teach you, but the arm wouldn't cash the checks the mind was writing. Doubles that once felt automatic drifted. Cross, meanwhile, was ice. No reverence, no nerves, just clinical scoring and clean finishing. Think a young Jordan going at an aging Magic. Respect for the legend, zero mercy for the man. When the last dart nailed D18 and Cross crumpled in disbelief, Taylor crossed the oki to embrace him. That was the moment the power was finally switched off. So, there you have it, 19 PDC finals, 14 victories, 5 defeats that still sting. But here's what those numbers don't tell you. They don't tell you about the pressure of being Phil Taylor, walking to that oki year after year, knowing that anything less than victory was failure. Think about it. In any other sport, reaching 19 finals across 25 stagings would be hailed as mythic. In darts, it was just what Phil Taylor did. The man turned expectation into routine, pressure into performance, and dominance into an art form. He didn't just win, he made winning look inevitable. Dennis Priestley broke his heart and forged his character. Peter Manley became his personal dartboard. John Part proved he was human, then reminded him he was superhuman. Raymond van Barneveld gave him his greatest defeat and his sweetest revenge. Kevin Painter nearly stole his destiny. Gary Anderson showed him his mortality. Rob Cross wrote his epitaph.
Straight Phil, which seems to have been a problem so far. He can cope, and he can cope well.
But through it all, through the whitewashes and the thrillers, through the routine victories and the crushing defeats, Phil Taylor remained the power. Will we ever see another Phil Taylor? Will anyone ever dominate a sport the way he dominated darts? I don't think so, and I don't think we should want to. What Taylor achieved was lightning in a bottle, the perfect combination of talent, timing, and sheer bloody-minded determination. He arrived at exactly the right moment in darts history, when the sport was professionalizing but before the competition caught up. He was Bill Russell with better finishing, Tom Brady with more longevity, Jack Nicklaus with tungsten instead of golf clubs. But more than that, he was the man who took darts from the pub to the palace, from the working men's clubs to the world stage. Every player who throws a dart professionally today owes something to Phil Taylor. Michael van Gerwen might have more natural talent. Gerwin Price might have more charisma. Michael Smith might have more power. But none of them will ever have what Phil Taylor had. The ability to make the impossible look routine. The capacity to turn pressure into performance. The sheer, relentless pursuit of perfection that defined 2 decades of sporting excellence.
With 88, hoping to get 2 darts at double. 18, fat 18, leaving bull. We've seen him hit it for that 167 combo, and he hits it again. And he goes in.
19 finals, 14 PDC crowns. The power period. Phil the Power Taylor didn't just play darts, he was darts. And now that he's gone, the sport feels a little smaller, a little less magical, a little more ordinary. But that's okay, that's how it should be. Legends aren't meant to last forever. They're meant to inspire, to amaze, to show us what's possible when talent meets obsession. Phil Taylor showed us what's possible, and for that, we should all be grateful. The power is off. Long live the power. Right, that's every single Phil Taylor PDC World Championship final explained. But here's the thing, I know I've barely scratched the surface. My audience knows more about these matches than I ever will, so please, in the comments below, tell me what I missed. What were the key moments I glossed over? Which finals deserve deeper analysis? Most importantly, hit that subscribe button.